In this video, I'm going to be talking about capturing Christianity, Cameron Bertuzzi, and the shift that I've seen over the last year or so of Cameron featuring priests in particular, talking about esoteric discussions of demons and demon possession, exorcism, sharing a lot of anecdotes and stories. Now, I have to begin with a disclaimer. I haven't watched any of those videos, and there's really two reasons for that. One reason is that my shift in my career about a year ago into workplace investigations means I just don't have as much time to devote to subject matter, including new content on YouTube. But the other factor is the one that I think will launch my discussion here in a moment. And it's that I have a general skepticism about some of these stories. My skepticism really is related in a large part to this book, Malachi Martin's book, Hostage to the Devil. So Martin was a somewhat irreverent, controversial priest who talked about high-profile exorcisms and wrote this very popular book probably 50 years ago now. I think it was the early 70s or the mid 70s, I believe. Anyway, it's been in print for ever since then. It was a very popular book. I read it around 20 or 25 years ago, probably the late 90s. And I was pretty disenchanted when I read it because it seemed to me the narrative was okay. It wasn't great. It was okay. But I just found it to be sort of fanciful stories, really lacking in critical reflection and gravitas. And it just seems to me, from what I've seen of the clips from the interviews Cameron has done, that I had that same sense. I could be completely wrong in that, but it seemed to me very sensational, like this book, but not as maybe closely rooted to evidence and argument and critical analysis and reflection. Again, I haven't watched any of these videos. I could be wrong, but I did. This prompted me to post a survey on Twitter. So I posted this yesterday, and as of now, it's still 7 hours left. But here's the question. Over the last year, Capturing Christianity has hosted a growing number of conversations on demons and possessions. Which description best represents your response to this shift? First was interesting, fascinating, ridiculous, discrediting, and indifferent, meh. Now, first thing is the way I interpret this is indifferent and meh is bad because if you're going to have a shift in critical content, if people don't really care, then that's probably not a good shift. And ridiculous and discrediting is very bad because it's really undermining your brand. It's not just somewhat neutral, maybe, but it's actually undermining it. Think, I don't know, of a fast food restaurant chain that puts a new item on the menu, and you could have some people that love it, some people that or just don't want to order it and don't like it, and then some people that think it's terrible and it's really undermining their whole faith in the restaurant chain, right? Uh, those latter two responses, those people who don't order it and those people who actually think it's harming the brand and don't order it, those are very bad. And so, broadly speaking, I think you got around here, 72% of people responding to this survey at least are very skeptical and negative about it, including 40%, very significant percentage that think it is actually harming the brand of Capturing Christianity very significantly. And only 28% are very positive about it. Now, take that with a grain of salt because the bottom line is I've seen some of these interviews Cameron has done have garnered huge viewership, much more so than another cosmological debate argument video. So ultimately, that may be the proof in the pudding here, is if he's pulling in the numbers and he knows that better than anybody. But if you are going to talk about exorcism and spirits and demons, I had my own experience of what I believe was something demonic in nature, and I've done a video about that. And it happened to me when I was in Japan in 1994. So I'm no skeptic in principle to these things, and I'm a supernaturalist. I believe there's a supernatural dimension to reality. So I'm open to that as well, and to having discussions about malevolent spiritual agencies and things like that. But this is a book that I think of when I'm thinking about serious discussions from an evidential, philosophical, and really interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary perspective. He was published about, I don't know, 12 years ago, and co-edited between William Kay and a friend of mine, Robin Perry, called Exorcism and Deliverance. And I actually interviewed Robin on a podcast I had like 10 years ago or more on this book. I thought it was a very good book. And it does explore the issues of how should Christians and others think about the possibility of malevolent spiritual agencies or non-human, non-physical intelligence out there that may interact with human beings. It explores it in some, I think, very defensible, reasonable ways, but it's not sensationalistic and it doesn't depend upon anecdotes. So I thought this is a book which didn't sell well, so far as I could see, and didn't get a lot of attention and just sunk into the waves of obscurity. But it was an interesting book, and to my mind, anyway, this would be a more interesting way to really approach this topic. Here's where I want to say is the danger from what I can see about the way that some of the guests, and again, this is what I'm hearing from other people, not that I've watched these interviews myself. The vibe that I'm getting from people about the guests and the shift to more focus on the demons and the esoteric and the hidden side of reality kind of stuff. It reminds me of Art Bell. And I want to say that I was a huge fan of Art Bell. Who is Art Bell, if you don't know? Um, he used to host a radio program syndicated across North America and around the world. And I think eventually it streamed online. And then it was taken over by another guy named George Newry. And it was called Coast to Coast. And Art Bell would broadcast from like midnight to 5 a.m. or something every night. And then he'd have on guests and they'd talk about things like Sasquatch or the abominable snowman or ghosts, spiritual agencies, crystals, alien visitation. You get the picture, right? All of these sorts of things. And that was Coast to Coast. And I loved listening to Coast to Coast. It was great entertainment, but I never thought that the vast majority of these people were credible in what they were talking about. So it was entertainment and it was enjoyable. And um, I was really sad when Art Bell stepped down from the show, and even sadder when he passed away, I think in about 2018. But classic conspiracy theory kind of stuff, right? And not, again, not very credible. So my fear is that Capturing Christianity is harming the brand insofar as Cameron is hosting people who lack credibility in some of these issues. Now, there is inherent tension here, I think, and this cannot be understated, from the fact that people have different plausibility frameworks. So it's no surprise that an atheist, for example, who thinks everything is natural and should be explained in terms of natural causes, is going to be incredulous in principle to a conversation about demons and demon possession. And they will think, well, that's medieval. And they may not even be open to seriously considering evidence for it. I mean, this is a reality for everyone. We are all skeptical to various degrees of truth claims that are far outside of whatever our plausibility framework is. And I don't think that Christians should apologize for exploring topics which to others may seem very esoteric, even absurd, ridiculous, silly, flying spaghetti monster territory, just because those people don't have the same plausibility framework as the Christian. Certainly, I don't think Capturing Christianity should apologize for that or be too worried about that. I'm reminded here of my book that I published on heaven 10 or 11 years ago now. So, this was a book that I published on heaven for a Christian audience, which is exploring theological and philosophical issues with respect to the concept of the restoration of all creation and what that would look like. And so I address issues such as animal resurrection, and I address issues such as the nature of the resurrection body, the possible age of resurrection bodies, whether resurrection bodies could age, whether they could go through cycles of of life, death, rebirth, and eternity as part of the dynamics of the plurality of a living, breathing new creation. All sorts of other questions I address in that book. And some people who read the book, because I was doing a lot of apologetics at the time, they were atheist skeptics. And I mean, I also and well, there's one guy I remember in particular, an atheist, who posted a scathing review of the book. I think he actually pardoned my language, but he used the word bullshit. So bullshit. There's no critical interaction with the arguments of the book from within the context of a Christian plausibility framework. The whole, pardon me, my dog's barking. The whole idea of the book was not to offer a defense of heaven, eternity, general resurrection, issues like that to a person who is skeptical. Would you be quiet, please? Sorry, someone ran by our house and the dog is really upset. But anyway, my point, quiet, okay? Quiet. My point wasn't to okay, get out. Jeez, my point wasn't to defend the credibility of the concept of heaven or the conversation about it, to be skeptical of it. Okay, hopefully the dog's calmed down now. So think, or maybe he hasn't, but think by analogy, if you're an atheist or naturalist and you devote a conversation to arguing how consciousness is in fact material, and the things that we think are, ineradicable or irreducible, I should say, qualia, are in fact just neural synapses. So they're offering a very reductionistic account of consciousness from within the context of their naturalistic reductionistic worldview. A Christian, and not only Christian, but many people who are not reductionists about consciousness, would find the very idea that you could think of or propose thinking about or talking about consciousness as being reducible to brain states or to neural synapses. They would find that to be an absurd conversation even to be having. But if you're a reductionist naturalist, then to explore how this could be the case would be just part of what it is to have that view of the world. It's within your plausibility framework because it's part of your belief system that, in fact, all aspects of reality are reducible to the material. So let's try to figure out and have a conversation about how consciousness can be reducible to brain states. And you shouldn't worry too much that some people are going to be skeptical or incredulous or contemptuous of the fact that you're even having the conversation, because the conversation isn't for them. And if Cameron wants to host discussions about demon possession uh, and the demons and demon oppression, all these related issues, exorcisms, recognizing that for many Christians, this is just going to be part of an exploration of aspects of the worldview, but some people may be incredulous of it, skeptical of it, or even contemptuous of it. Fair enough. Again, we can do that. So, and you shouldn't have to apologize for it or feel you have to. So, I mean, 100% I support Cameron in that regard. He can explore aspects of the Christian worldview however he likes. I would say this, however, that it does impact, again, your channel, or I should say your brand. Let's think about this as a brand. It impacts your brand if you're increasingly viewed by many people as more sensationalistic and art bell explorations of the esoteric and the unexplainable, and maybe even a nest of conspiracy theories and irrationality, rather than the more sober minded and less sensational exploration of topics like you would find in this interdisciplinary book I referenced, Exorcism and Deliverance from a Multidisciplinary Perspective. And in that case, here's one possibility to consider before I conclude. And the possibility is developing different brands. So, for example, the Capturing Christianity brand could be the more conventional brand, which is continuing with some of the more mainstream conversations. And then maybe there's another brand uh, that Cameron might want to have, which is exploring and devoted to some of these conversations, which are more outside of the norm of conventional debate and discussion, and maybe freely and without apology exploring some of these more esoteric themes. And in that way, you can say, okay, this is the brand for this, and this is the brand for this, and the one isn't diluting or negatively impacting the other. You can still have your priests talking about demons, and you could have Hugh Ross talking about leprechauns, but it's not impacting your mainstream channel. I don't know. Maybe that's one possibility. Now, on the other hand, it does take a lot of money, time to invest in developing another brand, but that is one possibility to think of. Bottom line is, I myself am somewhat ambivalent about the whole topic and the way it's being approached. And I've found this exercise and the result of the survey to be interesting.